Well, good morning. I'm Ken Biberai, and welcome to Coffee with Ken, a thought leadership series at the nexus of business and politics. We are live in person for another coffee conversation. We are at House 1229 in Washington, D.C., a incredibly historic and amazing venue. Teddy Roosevelt used to live here, and now it's a dynamic women's social club, but they let us in for a special exclusive Coffee with Ken today. In the news today, the Supreme Court is going to hear testimony about whether President Trump can be on the ballot in 2024, and the Kansas City Chiefs take on the 49ers in the Super Bowl this weekend. Today's topic is is empowering design through fearless leadership, and we are joined by Lakisha Ann Woods, the CEO of the American Institute of Architects. Pleasure to have you.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So this is like your second home now, huh?
This is definitely my second home, but better decorated.
Beautiful fireplace.
Yes. Of course, doesn't everybody have this?
Well, look, right out the gate, we were excited to have you on this conversation because by day, I work at Savills in commercial real estate, so we're always dealing with the built environment and tenants in the market and the future of real estate in cities. But you also authored this very controversial book that says, never get their coffee, and all I do is get people coffee. So before we dive in, why don't you tell us a little bit about the book?
Well, it's actually interesting. The reason I have the book is because I was doing some thought leadership on LinkedIn, and a publisher reached out to me and said, I've noticed your posts. Have you ever thought about writing a book? And I had, but who has time to actually put it all together? So I sent her sort of a draft of what I had put together based on a lot of those posts. And she said, and I said, the one thing I knew was I had a title, and that was Never Get Their Coffee. And it was because of an experience I had, first job out of college, and it really sort of stuck with me, seeing a female leader being sent to get coffee when she was in charge of the actual content of the discussion, and the men in the room ended up having the conversation in her place while she was out getting coffee. And I thought, she should never get their coffee.
Right.
And it really stuck with me, and it really relates to a lot of different things in today's environment. I think I noticed it in COVID, where women suddenly became the note takers on the calls. Even in a group of CEOs, it was always, oh, Kelly, will you take notes? Like, why doesn't Jim take notes?
Yeah.
So it's just how we can sort of sit back and remember that leadership comes in all forms, and we need to see all people as leaders.
But what I love about the book is you take us through this journey of your own career and all of these lessons and kind of tidbits from other CEOs and leaders. Talk a little bit about your background and how you ended up here now as the CEO of AIA.
Oh, I went to the University of Maryland in College Park, go Terps.
Yeah.
And I actually applied for a job at an association. It was the National Ready Mix Concrete Association. And I applied basically to practice interviewing. I thought the best way to get interview skills is to be in the actual experience. And so I didn't know anything about concrete. I just thought, oh, I'll just do this interview. And then when I got home from the interview, I had an offer letter and benefits sitting on my doorstep. And I was so excited about the speed to which they offered me the job that I'm like, oh, I definitely want to work there.
Wow,
they move fast. And then I realized it's an association. They don't actually move fast, but my then boss did. And I actually ended up following him around a lot. That was a part of my career move. So National Ready Mix Concrete Association to Associated General Contractors of America to then the National Association of Home Builders. Haven't figured out a trend. I really dig construction. And I love that you can see the work that your members do. And it was always a dream to one day work for the American Institute of Architects. And when I was CEO for the National Institute of Building Sciences and this opportunity presented itself, it seemed like an opportunity I couldn't pass up.
And what an exciting time, right? I mean, so first of all, just the built environment just seems to be top of mind for so many people, internationally, globally. This feels like less of a role now that's domestic focused, almost more global focused, right? I mean, talk about the platform and what you've been surprised by.
Well, AIA represents members from around the world. So we have members across the country, globally. We have over 98,000 members now, on our way to 100,000. Wow. We will get that number before the end of this year. And we have found that, AIA has two goals within its strategic plan. One is climate action for human and ecological health, and the other is advancing racial and gender equity. And so one, of course, climate, right? Yep. It is, buildings produce 40% of carbon emissions. So we have to turn to architects to find solutions to fix climate. And, architects are really leaders in that space because they have a unique skill set and they are able to bring all the various stakeholders together to aim towards positive solutions. We have a lot of resources to help with that, our materials pledge and 2030 commitment, but at the end of the day, we're trying to make sure that we are building awareness of what architects do, because so often we'll hear people say, oh, architects, and they see this prestige around the role, especially internationally. It is, ooh, architects. Yeah. It's you like walked in and you're suddenly like president of the United States, but it's still sort of understanding that value, almost specifically in the US, and showcasing what they can do, because they are truly so focused on helping their community. And it's a joy to work for a group of people who are so focused on helping their community and helping their clients, and with the best of intentions. So again, it's been 2 years, it's flown by so fast, and to work with architects has been a pleasure. And I know our staff team, it's been easy to recruit because of the goals that we're focused on. Who doesn't want to get around those two topics?
No, totally. And right now we're at House 1229, right? We're not at your building because it's under construction, right?
It is.
Talk a little bit about that journey and how you're implementing some of this vision around climate and sustainability and equity and inclusion through that process.
Absolutely. Well, AIA, the organization is 167 years old. It started in New York City, but when they moved to DC, they actually occupied the Octagon, which was the former house, the White House after the War of 1812. But they moved into that building, and once they grew out of it, they built a building behind it back in 1973. So 50 years ago, they built a building, and it hasn't been updated since. So needless to say, it was in need of a renewal, and those single pane glass windows just need to go. It's sort of, again, opposite of our climate message. And so we're in the midst of a renewal. EHDD, a San Francisco architect, is the lead architect on the project, along with Hartman Cox here in DC, running point, and being managed by Stephen Ayers, the 11th architect of the Capitol. So great people involved in the process. And we are really excited about what's to come. We actually have our annual meeting that's going to be here in DC in June, the 5th through the 8th. And we're doing tours of the building, because architects love a tour.
They do.
Love a tour. So the hard hat tour is coming. And we're excited about what that space can be and bringing the community together. We are referring to it as the global campus for architecture and design, because we've had students from around the country that have asked to come to the space and do design competitions. We want to really connect to the community and showcase, again, the best of what architects do. We'll have an exhibit, a bookstore, all within our own space, and spaces that our members can use when they're in town. But in addition, of course, we also have our Octagon Museum that's still open for business right now. So you can go there. So there's a lot going on with AIA, and we're just keeping busy and making sure people know about the great work of architects.
Wow, incredible. And speaking of that work, I mean, architects are at the forefront of the built environment and sustainability and these larger climate conversations, right? In a way that I feel like previously maybe didn't get enough attention. So as people think about the future of real estate, the future of cities, what is the message coming out of AIA about what people should be thinking about on that journey, or to your members, right? Is it a moment to pause, not rush, and reflect ahead of starting projects? And
well, I think there are a lot of different topics and different angles, but one thing is certain: people need to recognize that skill set that an architect brings. So often people will bring an architect in when they're just ready for the building to be designed. Or they also just think that architects only do buildings, right? But architects design all the spaces where we live, work, learn, and play. And, we also have to remember that I think the stat is that we as people spend 90% of our time in those spaces. So don't you want to know that somebody was very focused on making sure that those spaces are healthy? And architects, when they get their licensure, it is about the health, safety, and welfare of the community. And that actually was the learning opportunity for me. Having spent my whole career in various construction trades, I always thought that was the code officials, right? And then, I'd been to some code hearings, and I thought, I don't know if they're necessarily focused.
Oh my gosh!
Just on like the welfare of the community and health. And so, yes, it is important. One, that we get more architects involved in those code hearings also, but that we recognize the power that architects, what they do, how they help their communities, how critical it is for owners and developers to see the value in what they are recommending, especially from a sustainability perspective. Because what I keep hearing is, we put recommendations in for all these sustainable features and ESG, sing all the letters you want. At the end of the day, they keep getting value engineered out.
Yeah.
Oh, it's about first cost.
Yeah.
But the lifetime cost of the building is what you need to focus on, because that's 97% of your costs.
Hmm.
So how do we educate our owners and our developers to make better long-term decisions? But also, how do we educate the communities so that they demand better?
Yeah.
If they did, we would see a change in what we are designing in our spaces.
And look, we're in Washington, D.C., seat of power for our government. Associations in D.C. often have a role dealing with government and advocacy and kind of lobbying. I think in your prior roles, maybe there was more of a focus on dealing with government. How do you think AIA moving forward under your stewardship will kind of think about that intersection of government and business and your members and so on? And, you're going to do more of that. I think you've spent more time on the Hill and traveling and.
We do have to. I will say that having spent, again, much of my time in trade associations in this space that spend a lot of time and dollars focused on advocacy, I was surprised at the state of advocacy or that focus within AIA. Many members said we don't need to be involved in politics.
Yeah.
That's kind of not our place. But one of the things that we've been talking about is when I listen to what challenges they're facing, and then I look at where other groups are successful, it's because they didn't have a seat at the table.
Yeah.
And when you're not at the table, you're what's for dinner, right? And that is literally what's happened. There is unnecessary risk that has been put on the shoulders of an architect. And I believe strongly that part of the reason that they're taking on those risks is because they were not at the table to negotiate and advocate for themselves. And so we have to change those dynamics. And I think that the members have been really kind and accepting of that feedback, that I understand that this isn't about, in DC, I think part of our frustration, and even in talking to some of my friends, right? We have friends from all different backgrounds and different perspectives, political perspectives, but where are we aligned, right? I think everybody wants to have a safe house to live in. Everybody wants to know that their children can go to schools that are safe and that they have great air quality. Everybody wants to have more positive things for their homes and their communities. And how do we get there together, nonpartisan, right? How do we find those solutions? And so that's what we really want to focus on, where we all align, because people can always talk about how we're different. We're all different. But where do we align, and where do we find safe spaces to come together and have these conversations, right?
Just coffee, right?
Just coffee. Everything is solved with coffee.
Well, it's Black History Month, and you talk a lot about in the book about the importance of you leading as a woman of color, right? Talk about that, your role, you being a visible leader of this organization, increasing the diversity amongst architects and just in the building trades and the built environment as a whole.
Sure. Well, again, part of the reason I wanted to come work at AIA is because of those two goals. And racial and gender equity, that's to put that in writing, I just want you to know how bold that was of the boards that put that in place. And the numbers, there's a lot of stats, right, that break it up. And there's growth in the schools. So there's more diversity in architecture school. I think about 41% of those that are studying architecture represent diverse groups. So that's fantastic. 50-50 male to female, that's fantastic. What we are finding, though, still in the profession is it's still 80% white male licensed architects, or close to that number. I guess it's 22% female. But we really have to increase those numbers. Sure. But the number that really hit me was one of the awards that we give is the Whitney M. Young Award. And Whitney M. Young came and spoke to AIA over 50 years ago and expressed his displeasure with their representation of African-American architects in the space, and said that they needed to do more and challenged them to do more. And at the time that he gave that speech, 2% of licensed architects were African-American. And Robert Easter, professor at Hampton University, won the award this past year in San Francisco. He got on stage and he gave a speech. And he said, when Whitney M. Young gave the speech, 2% of licensed architects were African-American. And today, as you give me this award, 2% of licensed architects are African-American. Stop with the awards, make a difference. take action. And so those words really stuck with me. What are we going to do to significantly move the needle? And it requires intentional change, and especially in leadership. And so it's Black History Month. And so for all the companies out there that are posting their social posts celebrating Black History Month, before you post it, go to your website, take a look at your leadership. If there's not a single person of color, and specifically since it's Black History Month, not a single person that is African American or Black on your leadership team, save the speech. Take action, because that's all that matters. And if you're not doing it, then it's just talk. And got to tell you, especially after George Floyd, pretty tired of the talk.
Yeah. You've been a pioneer and a leader, and you're really focused on results and action. So talk a little bit about some of the accomplishments you've had over the years. Stop the Clock, Women's Leadership Forum. What have you been most proud of, and what kind of accomplishments are you trying to achieve in the horizon?
Sure. Well, it's only been 2 years. Got to get some basics in place. I think one of the first things I noticed when I came on board with AIA is they were really good at just sort of self-reflection, right? So they had done surveys about the makeup of their membership, the makeup of their leadership. They were intentional about putting processes in place to improve the diversity of the people who win awards, of the people who are actually on the jury selecting people for the awards, right? All those different aspects that really impact whether or not people have an ability to become a part of leadership, or, if you're going to grow in your company, winning an award helps that, right? So those elements, and also how they're diversifying their board. Our board, I think, is the most diverse board I've seen in quite some time, and that's the work of the members, really not just talking, but taking action. And so that's very impressive. From a staff perspective, though, what was shocking to me was that in the leadership of AIA, it was not very diverse. It was like 10% diverse. So how are we going to fix that? And so whenever there were openings, we wanted to make sure that we were intentional about looking at all possible people who could fill that role. And also we took into play, like, how diverse is our team and where are those opportunities? The great news is, again, because of AIA's strategic plan and what they're trying to do, there was an overwhelming mix of people that were eager to come work for the organization. So it made it really easy. There were so many great candidates for each of our open positions. But now when you look at the leadership of AIA on the staff side, it's like 66% diverse.
Wow.
So it's, to me, that makes me proud, because we are showcasing that there are great people who are breaking records, right? We've had the highest membership growth year over year, in the highest number of members in the history of the company, all those pieces, right? It's the leadership team and the staff that they've brought on board that are really doing a great job, and working with the team that has been here for a great deal of time. So it's that collaboration. But what are we doing there, staffing wise? And then also Women's Leadership Summit. It was an event that they did. It was every other year. And I said, so you're focused on gender equity, and you're going to focus on them every other year. So how about we make that annual? And it was clear that it was important, because last year's event sold out months before it happened, and there was like 250 person waiting list. And we said, okay, we're gonna need a bigger house. So we are now in a bigger space. We're gonna be in Chicago this fall. And again, it's not just about, bringing architects, female architects. It's about everybody, right? Because women can talk to each other about their challenges, but if men don't also hear what those challenges are, and they're still the majority of the leadership, we're not going to see the change that we need. So we all need to come together. And that's also why we need a bigger space, because yes, the content, those leaders often are women that are going to be on that stage, but everybody needs to hear what's happening and how we can make improvements together. So it's been really exciting to see just the number of people who are like, when does registration open? I don't want to be left out this time. I want to get ahead of it. So
let's continue on that thread about kind of advice for leaders in this room, leaders watching. Even on the recruitment and the diversity, equity, inclusion side, it's not about just being reactive, about waiting for resumes to come in. Talk about how you have to be proactive. Like, what's your kind of philosophy around accomplishing some of these goals and kind of pushing people and pushing limits and kind of diving deeper?
Absolutely. Well, one of the first things that I did at AIA is I never assume that I know everything. So I like to bring in third-party experts who will validate what we need to make changes on. And so they analyzed our HR practices. They analyzed our finance department. We take a look at sort of basically an audit of what we're doing well and where we have an opportunity for improvement. And they talk to the people on staff, they look at our processes. And part of that HR process was they weren't necessarily posting the position on diverse job boards. So if you are looking for leaders, where are you posting those positions? Because if you're posting them in the same place, or if you're just hiring the people you know, but the people you know don't look any different than you, then you're always going to have that same mix of people, and you're not going to see that diversity. And I found it interesting because I've spoken on panels or at different conferences, and they'll say, "Wow, I never thought about," like when they we went to a recruiter and they didn't bring us diverse candidates. And I was like, "Was your recruiter diverse?" Oh, I like that. They exist, you know. So it's like, how are you intentionally seeking out people who can see a greater perspective of people? And again, it's not just, I say to the members all the time, it's not because it's the right thing to do. Companies that have a more diverse leadership team are more innovative and are more financially successful. So it is the profitable thing to do. And that's what I'm here for also, because architects really have to get paid a higher wage. They are so, how can I help the community? And I said, when I came to work for AIA, I discovered I went to work for the Peace Corps because they just give and give. And one member told me, oh, you know, we helped this client and they exceeded their sustainability goals, so they gave us a bonus. It's like, that's wonderful. You just put that back into your team. Oh, well, you know, we wanted to help them celebrate achieving it, so they just put all that money back into the project. I was like, you're killing me. I can't recruit. I can't help you recruit people into your space if you're not paying them. Like, we're not saying people need to be, you know, billionaires, but people want to know that if they're going to spend the amount of time that it takes to work in this space and to become a licensed architect, that they're going to be paid a fair wage, they're going to be able to take care of their family and have a good life. And also, you know, work-life balance, because everybody's got to find a way to make it happen. Health is an issue for everyone in every industry, and we've got to find a way to help people, you know, work hard, play hard, make that balance happen. Because if not, you're also going to lose people in that regard.
That's why I brought my wife here, because like,
there you go.
We never get to see each other.
I try to take my husband and daughter everywhere I can, even though sometimes I'm like, I have no time. But oh, it's so good to see you at night. I'm like, hi.
They would love this place.
Yes, they haven't made it here yet.
So you mentioned that it's very funny about architects kind of being in the Peace Corps and so on, right? Like from previous speeches I've seen you give, like you talk, they want to save the world, right? I mean, you're dealing with a group of members that are motivated by community, by vision, by aspiration, but by larger social changes. What's it like kind of herding and managing and coordinating so many creatives and mission-driven kind of, you know, individuals? I mean,
well, it's inspiring. I will say that. I learn something new every day. I often said last year, I spent a lot of time with our president, Emily Grandstaff Rice, and she is one of those people that she would walk in this building and she would point out things no normal person, like everyday person would ever notice. Oh, you know, you can see where they added on an extension to this building. And walking through an airport, because we spent a lot of time walking through airports, she would point things out. And that's why this side over here is LEED Platinum and this doesn't have a sign. I'm like, oh, wow. And just, I've worked in the construction space my whole career, and my eyes are being opened to new things because architects are so smart. And I love it. I absolutely love it. I just love learning. You don't want to be in a place where you are stagnant and you don't learn and you're not inspired by the people that you spend all your day working for. So that's what's been really exciting for me.
Well, I love the book, but give a quick takeaway on what you mean when you say empowering fearless leadership. Like, what do you want people to take away?
Well, I think that it's important for everybody to recognize their strengths and their weaknesses, and also to be aware of your circles, your social circles, how you treat other people, including children. Because at the end of the day, a lot of what we face as far as the lack of diversity in teams or companies, it comes from, or lack of female leadership, right? It comes from how we treat people when they're young. And I have a young daughter. She's 5 years old. I go shopping for clothes and everything is, you know, unicorns and princess. And then the boys' clothes are, you've got this champ leader, right? Wait, why is it champ leader, right? So I'm like seeking out the clothes, which are harder to find, that celebrate strength in leadership for young people, but also how we talk about what they have. So stuffed animals, how many stuffed animals are, it's always he, right? And actually when we just had the snow, like, oh, we're going to go build a snowman, right? Nope. I said, we're going to go build a snow girl. Right. And she's like, my snow girl. And she refers to all of her stuff. All of her stuffed animals are girls. They're not.
Right.
And if you're going to be a doctor, what's your doctor? My doctor's a girl, right? To her, you're always a girl if you're a leader. But that's because we are focusing on exposing her to that, or all people can be, but it's not that it's only boys. So treating that, and it requires everybody, aunts, uncles, cousins, like you have to recognize the words we use. It shapes what people think a leader can be. And it's also the books that we read and what do leaders look like in those books for children, for young adults, right? And so it does really require everyone to understand how we got to where we are and what we need to change in order to make a difference.
Amazing. Well, before I let you go, I just wanted to kind of jump on one quick question that my colleague Wendy would insist I ask, is around wellness, right? And you've talked a little bit about, physical and mental wellness, but also the physical wellness around us. What role do you think architects should be playing around kind of focusing on wellness and, light and natural air? And I know you've also been on a big kick in Maryland, for example, about the need for accountability around our schools and wellness and air quality, and the fact that schools in this country are closed because they don't have HVAC. And we spend 90% of our time inside. So I just love, a couple seconds on.
Well, thank you. Again, health is such an important issue, and architects, again, I say, we were speaking to the mayors and I keep telling them, architects are your partners for progress. You start there and they can help you make the best decisions for healthy buildings, healthy spaces. And I think it's so important to lean on them to make sure that, we're asking our mayors to look across the cities and hire a chief architect, because that's your right arm. That's the person that's going to help you make the best decisions for the community. And to me, that's been really exciting to try to push that initiative. And we were just talking to Mayor Cantrell down in New Orleans, and she was very just passionate about how important it is to do that. And so she said she was going to talk to her fellow brothers and sisters across the country in order to try to make that kind of change. And again, turning to architects to help with that, because that's who makes those decisions. And the schools, if we don't think about our children, and if you're concerned, and again, that news broadcast I talked about in Baltimore, where a woman was picking up her daughter from school because it had to close because it was 120 degrees, and she was about to lose her job because she couldn't take another day off of work if the school didn't open the next day. What kind of equitable environment are we really living in? If we, climate inequity, that's why they just are so aligned. If every school doesn't have the ability to have equal conveniences, air quality, resources, if we don't have that, then nobody has a chance to be equal when they are going through learning. You're not thinking about your books if you're burning up, or you're wondering if your mom's gonna have a job the next day. So we really need to think about those real issues when we're making decisions about schools, about all the spaces.
Lakisha Ann Woods, the CEO, American Institute of Architects. And I think it's just worth kind of like, doubling down on this notion that if you were watching and you thought we were going to talk about architecture and brutalist architecture or modernism, that's not what this is about, right? This is about gender equality. It's about climate change. It's about children and our future. And it's kudos to you that is what we were talking about today. And I think it's just a testament to you and your leadership. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's great.
And coffee.
Yes.
And before I leave, I just want to read my favorite line from her book. Coffee is the fuel that powers the office. It keeps you going between back-to-back meetings. And she goes on to say that coffee represents productivity and coffee matters. So that's my contribution.
It definitely matters to me.
Thank you all for being here in person. Thank you to House 1229. Thank you for watching. Until next time, thank you very much.